Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Gopi Janavara Girivaradari Gopi Janavara Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajanana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajanana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Nirojaya Mudire Nastapa Subhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Utamashloke Bhakti Bhagavati Naishtaki. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We will be reading from the 10th canto of chapter 38, text 24 through 27. Translation for text 24. Shukadeva Goswami continued, "My dear king, while the son of Swalbaka, traveling on the road, thus meditated deeply on Sri Krishna, he reached Goloka as the sun was beginning to set." Text 25. Translation. In the cowherd pasture, Akrura saw the footprints of those feet whose pure dust the rulers of all the planets in the universe hold on their crowns. Those footprints of the Lord, distinguished by such marks as the lotus, barleycorn, and elephant goat, made the ground wonderfully beautiful. Text 26. Increasingly agitated by ecstasy at seeing the Lord's footprints, his bodily hairs stood on end because of his pure love, and his eyes filled with tears. Akrura jumped down from his chariot and began rolling about among those footprints, exclaiming, "Ah, this is the dust from my master's feet." And our verse for today, text 27, translation: the very goal of life for all embodied beings is this ecstasy, which Akrura experienced when, upon receiving Kamsa's order, he put aside all pride, fear, and lamentation, and absorbed himself in seeing, hearing, and describing things that reminded him of Lord Krishna. And go ahead and do the Sanskrit. Dehambritam iyanarta hitva damba biyam sucham sandesharyo hare linga darshana shravanadibi. Dehambritam, of all embodied beings, iyan, this much, artaha, the goal of life, hitva, giving up, dambam, pride, biyam, fear, sucham, and sorrow. Sandeshat, beginning from his being ordered by Kamsa. Ya, which, Harer, of Lord Krishna, Linga, the signs, Darshana, with the seeing, Shravana, hearing about, Adibi, and so on. Translation: the very goal of life for all embodied beings is this ecstasy, which Akrura experienced when, upon receiving Kamsa's order, he put aside all pride, fear, and lamentation, and absorbed himself in seeing, hearing, and describing the things that reminded him of Lord Krishna. Purport by the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that Akrura gave up fear by openly showing his love and reverence for Krishna, even though he or his family might have been punished by the angry Kamsa. Akrura gave up his pride in being an aristocratic member of society and worships the cowherd residents of the simple village of Vrindavan. And he gave up lamenting for his house, wife, and family, which were in danger from King Kamsa. Giving up all these things, he rolled in the dust of the lotus feet of God. All right, Chai. You found everything okay? You found everything okay? Okay, all right. So now we'll offer a few prayers to the lineage of teachers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umanitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Mayam Sampedantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Suderi Pranamami Priye Vanjakapadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavaribhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnupada Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pushpini Nidishishwari Vasati Shitani. Yeah, so there's a long list of teachers, and that was the Sanskrit prayers offering our respects to them. So translation for text 27. The very goal of life for all embodied beings is this ecstasy, which Akrura experienced when, upon receiving Kamsa's order, He put aside all pride, fear, and lamentation, and absorbed himself in seeing, hearing, and describing the things that reminded him of Lord Krishna. So we've been in this pastime of Akrura for a few classes now. And so as we've explored, Akrura is this chariot driver who is working for the evil king Kamsa, but is actually a devout lover of God and is on his way to Vrindavan to, in this pastime, retrieve God. Now, if we look from a further context, we'll see of this Srimad Bhagavatam, this ancient literature, we'll see that it is Shukadeva Goswami, the great saint, who is speaking this verse, who is narrating this event. And Shukadeva Goswami is speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. Now, who is Maharaj Parikshit? Maharaj Parikshit is the emperor of the whole world, actually. This is happening over 5,000 years ago. And he's the emperor of the whole world. But somehow or other, he's been cursed to die in 7 days. And at this time of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's only has a few days left. When Maharaj Parikshit was cursed, he decided that spiritual life was the only thing that he needed to focus on at this point of his life. And in this assembly of sages on the bank of the holy river Ganges, Shukadeva Goswami appears. And this entire Srimad Bhagavatam, this discourse, occurs. And Maharaj Parikshit, he inquires critical questions from Shukadeva Goswami, some of which being, what is the supreme occupation for all embodied persons? What is the duty of one who is about to die? And in this way, we can see that this conversation, this discussion of the Srimad Bhagavatam is relevant for every living entity in this world, because one, we all are performing various activities, and we are all sometime or other going to leave this body. We're going to experience the end of being in this physical body and refer to that as death. Now, in even a further context, there is a group of sages, and they have come together to hear this narration of Srimad Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami is this disciple of Shukadeva Goswami who has heard all of this narration between Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami. After this narration happens, what is called the Kali Yuga, or the next age, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, is coming on. And so these sages are wanting for the welfare of the world to come together to perform a great sacrifice and thus help the people of this age attain the supreme perfection. And what they do is they hear this narration of Srimad Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami. So why all of this is important is because in this Kali Yuga, there are so many distractions, there's so many impediments. It's said in the Srimad Bhagavatam itself that this age is an ocean of faults. But there is a great benediction that through the process of Bhakti Yoga, even in this ocean of faults, we can attain the topmost perfection. We can attain the ultimate goal of life, the goal of life that the sages have come together so that they can attain that and share that with the world. This ultimate perfection that Maharaj Parikshit is not only wanting to attain for himself, but to be exemplary in sharing it with the rest of the world. And thus the Srimad Bhagavatam, as this age of Kali Yuga has arrived, this Srimad Bhagavatam has also descended to give people the light in the darkness. And then we see in this instance with Akrura, he is exemplifying this very goal of life. And there's so many personalities, and we'll speak to that in some time, who also exemplify achieving this goal of life throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so the principle that is spoken in this translation is that that goal of life, we may have so many other smaller goals, but the ultimate goal that Pariksha Maharaj, the emperor of the universe who is about to die, is begging to know the answer to. And that very goal of life is that for all these embodied beings, is this ecstasy that Akrura is experienced. And he's experienced that by putting aside all pride, all fear, all lamentation, and absorbing himself in seeing, hearing, and describing the things that reminded him of Lord Krishna. This is an extreme ecstasy that we'll see as later on, actually in this, it's just the last verse alone. His very hair stood on end. He was overwhelmed with great jubilation. Because of his pure love, his eyes filled with tears. And he's exclaiming out of love, here is not even my Lord himself, just the footprints of my Lord. This is causing so much ecstatic love. And so if this ecstasy is this very goal of life, then the problem that we see in this age is that we're not experiencing that ecstasy. That we're not experiencing this overwhelming spiritual joy at every moment. In fact, we're actually experiencing a lot of tribulation, a lot of miseries, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. It's said in Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma Bhuvana Loka, that from the highest position in the world down to the lowest, there are all places where there are great difficulties, great miseries and suffering. But one who has attained this goal of life, they're forever immersed in that ecstasy, always blissful and able to transcend the dualities of pain and pleasure. So one might ask, what is the cause of our not feeling this ecstasy? And there may be various reasons, but I've summed it up for this class to be the material energy. It's said in the Bhagavad Gita that there are two energies of the world, para prakriti and apara prakriti, superior and inferior. The inferior energy is composed of gross matter, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and even more subtly, the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. And this para prakriti or superior energy is composed of the spiritual energy. It is the Sat Chit Ananda, the eternal, fully cognizant, and blissful energy. This is what comprises the spirit or the soul, the Atma. But somehow or other, when us as part and parcels, as spirit souls, have come in contact with the material energy, we are covered over. Just like the sun is always shining, but if it's overcast, like we experienced in New York, it was overcast for a few days. So we may not be able to see the sun. So this material energy is overcast over the self. And this prevents us from experiencing that ultimate ecstasy that is our natural constitutional position. And so how we can overcome that covering, how we can break through that covering, how we can have the light breaking through the clouds of this material illusion, is elaborated here in the very verse. Akrura put aside all the enemies of the self, in this case described as pride, fear, and lamentation. And what he did do is he absorbed himself in seeing, hearing, and describing the things that reminded him of Lord Krishna. So this is the solution for us, is this deep absorption in our spiritual practice. It's elaborated in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam by Prahlad Maharaj, the 9 various processes for devotional service. This is a universal principle. We'll see this in all spiritual traditions. The process of Shravanam, Kirtam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanavedanam. That through the 9 different processes of hearing, chanting, hearing about the Lord, chanting about the Lord, remembering the Lord, offering respects to the Lord, worshiping the form of the Lord, offering prayers to the Lord, serving the Lord as a servant, serving him as a friend, and ultimately surrendering everything to the Lord. Through this process, we can attain the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life, which is described as Krishna Prema. This is an inconceivable bliss, is the nature of the soul that we've become foreign to. And tapping into this will bring unlimited ananda, joy. Satchit ananda, eternal awareness in bliss. And it's stated by Srila Prabhupada that one can attain this perfection through any one of these 9 devotional services, these 9 devotional processes. One can do all 9 of them, or can perfect even just one of them. We see, for example, we mentioned Maharaj Parikshit. He gained this ultimate goal of life simply by sitting on the banks of the Ganga and hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami. He achieved this ecstatic goal of life, this Krishna Prema, this divine love for the Supreme Being. Shukadeva Goswami, he attained perfection through the process of kirtanam, of chanting, of speaking, of glorifying the Lord. He sat with Maharaj Parikshit and narrated the Srimad Bhagavatam, and thus achieved the ultimate goal of life, this ecstatic love for the divine. And Akrura here is demonstrating Vishnu Smarana, complete absorption of the mind in remembering the Lord. It's said that he didn't even remember driving the chariot because his mind was so absorbed in remembering all the details of the Lord. And then even upon seeing something that reminded him of the Lord, he stopped the cart, jumped down and paid his obeisance. He says, this is the footprints of my Lord. He attained the ultimate goal of life through this process. And for each of these processes, up to Atmanavedanam, where Bali Maharaj surrendered everything to the Lord, each of these processes as an example of how one attains the utmost treasure of life. And this reminds me of one example with Dhruva Maharaj. In the 4th canto, there is a king, and actually he's a prince. And he's very much hurt by his family. And because of this pain, he wanted material opulences greater than that of his family members. And in order to get this, he sought shelter of the Lord. And so we may have different desires other than the supreme goal of life. But it's stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that if you have no material desires or you have all material desires, still turn to the Lord for your answers. Surrender to him, take shelter in him. just as the son takes shelter of the father. So in this story with Dhruva Maharaj, once he, although with ulterior motives, once he perfected his yogic process and actually gained the darshan, the very sight, the audience, the association, the presence of the Lord, just that very presence brought in such deep love and affection for the Lord, such deep bliss, such deep peace, that he was embarrassed. He was embarrassed to present his desire to the Lord. The Lord came and said, please, what is your desire? And he was saying, now that I have your sight, I realize I was asking for broken pieces of glass. I wanted material things, temporary things that were not going to bring me ultimate pleasure, ultimate peace. But just by seeing you, I realize I've achieved the most valuable jewel. So by this process of absorbing ourselves in things that remind us of Krishna, hearing things about the Supreme Lord, seeing things, hearing things, remembering things, serving the devotees, Hare Krishna, we'll attain this process, we'll attain this fruit of divine love. And this is the ultimate journey. And Akrura is exemplifying this by going from this material state where the evil King Kamsa is ruling and in charge, and he's traveling to the sacred lands, the kingdom of the Lord. And in this process, feeling the ecstasy along the way before even meeting him in person. So what to speak of actually meeting him face to face. And one last thing, there are some principles stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and translated by His Divine Grace into the summary study, Nectar of Devotion, that there are many principles, but out of those many principles, the 5 crucial principles for attaining this goal is that we chant the names of the Lord, either through our meditation, through even you could say through classes, or hearing the names of God, through kirtan, that this process will very much help awaken this love. Through hearing and reading the literatures, the sacred literatures, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, other scriptures, the Bible. Through association with those who are devoting their life to God, to the spiritual path. By worshiping the form of the Lord and by living in a sacred place, like the temple. And it's not practicable for everybody in the world to live in the temple per se, but we can make our place of residence into a temple. Our very body is a temple. So if we cultivate that consciousness, if we raise the consciousness of the place that we reside in, then that too can be a holy place. Through these 5 processes, chanting the names of God, associating with devotees of the Lord, those who are devoted to God, reading and hearing sacred literatures, worshiping the form of the Lord, and by living in a sacred place. These 5 principles facilitate this growth, because as Akrura demonstrated, it's a journey to the spiritual kingdom. And these 5 processes, these 5 principles applied to the 9 processes of hearing and chanting and remembering. This will strongly guide us and safely guide us along the road back to this original spiritual state. So it's about 7:45 right now. I'd like to open it up to discussion if there's any questions or comments or anything to add on that I've missed. Any questions?
Hare Krishna, wonderful to hear from you. Wonderful to hear from you. Wonderful class. Thank you so much. You described that Akrura was in ecstasy, in a very high state of happiness, experiencing bliss and superlative joy. And then you described that there's a process to go from an ordinary state of consciousness to suffering, not just to end the suffering, but to get to the platform of really experiencing love for Krishna. You know, so there's a high level and there's a way to get there. And we perfectly described. We would also add, not to contradict anything, so that Krishna is so wonderful that he's providing that process. That Krishna is calling us and inviting us, guiding us, and giving us experiences to help us become hungry for that. And actually, what does it say? Shrinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Vidyan Sastro Vidanuti Sarvitatam. That the Supreme Lord, the Krishna, when we hear these literatures, that Krishna cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart. That Krishna, that there's a person behind the process who's giving us the process and introducing us to the process. And that he cleanses the desire, and then nasta priyeshvara badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. That by regularly hearing the glories of the Lord, not only is everything that troublesome to the heart destroyed, but service to the Lord is established in the heart as an irrevocable fact, irrevocable. That Krishna calls us out and helps us sustains us in that process and brings us to the highest level of experiencing ecstasy, which we can't even imagine. You hear about such a thing, and there's a drug called ecstasy, and you know, people throw around that word ecstatic, but there is actually, it's normal to be on that level of beyond excitement, that level of very high happiness. We saw the vomit bag. You know what is a vomit bag? Vomit bag. You know, when you go on the airline, in the pouch, there's a thing you can throw up. So we saw a vomit bag out on First Avenue on the ground. Yeah, that's my experience, vomit bag. And when you, it says on the vomit bag, without this vomit bag, you will not be admitted to the theater. In other words, the movie is so disgusting. And this is a selling point. That movie was this disgusting, this movie was that disgusting, and this movie is so disgusting that you get a vomit bag, you know? And so they're thinking that would be, they're so jaded. Well, there's an experience some people have, they're so covered over and so dull that they're thinking that excitement and disturbance would be better than being, dull. But it's misdirected. This kind of agitation is not the genuine happiness that's described in spiritual literature. That Krishna is calling us to a joy that's simultaneously sublime and supreme and eternal and really satisfying to the heart, not just disturbing the senses. So it's kind of interesting. There's a misdirected civilization. And then Krishna, we want to glorify Krishna. Krishna is saying, no, no, no. No, no, no. Don't go that way. Tamasima Jyotirgama. Don't stay in darkness. Come to the light. Here's something better. Param Dushtanavar today. This is a better experience. Anyway, just elaborating on what you pointed out and adding the personality who's providing the process. And we can get there. We can be confident. It's nice to hear that's available and then we want it and we can work toward it. And Krishna will help us. Krishna is so wonderful to help us. Okay, where is the Srila Prabhupada?
Thank you so much. Oh, we got a lot of hands.
Those hands, good.
Yeah.
What are they saying?
Which one should we start with? Perhaps Jeffrey Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for this class. And thank you for the time here to speak. I was reflecting while you were going through the verses about Akrura arriving in the sunset. And in Bhagavad Gita, was it 269? What is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-control. So he's arriving as the sun is setting, and he's about to have this ecstatic experience. And ecstatic is the ecstatic outside of his stasis, outside of being in his body, basically. And this deep understanding of his connection to Krishna, all at the orders of the jealous Kamsa, which is fascinating, by the way. But in any case, I was thinking about that. He's arriving, it's about to be nighttime, and he's about to see the moon-like face of Krishna. And so I was just thinking that if we are carrying out orders in our kind of daily lives that may be coming from imperfect sources, or even sources that are counter to our faith, can we still find Krishna in those activities that we've been ordered to complete by our material responsibility? So I guess that's my question.
Excellent question. I'll speak on this briefly since there's a lot of hands and not so much time. But there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita that says 9:27, Ya karoshya rashnasi yajta hosidasya yatapasyasi kuntaya tat karoshamarapanam. Krishna instructs Arjuna, who is fighting on a battlefield and has to, he's a warrior, he's a soldier, he has to kill. And Krishna is advising him, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that as an offering to me. And so we can see from this verse that, and from this example with Akrura, who is working for the enemy of Krishna, an enemy of Krishna, Kamsa, that, and this may apply differently to our circumstance, but that even then, Akrura was fully absorbed in his service to Krishna. Because he's performing this as an offering to Krishna. Our boss may not be the best person, but we're serving not the boss, but we're serving Krishna. We recognize Krishna is actually our boss, and that this person is just an instrument of the Lord. I could go on further, but I think there's a couple of questions here. So hopefully that gives some food for thought, Prabhu. Bruce Prabhu, you had your hands.
Hare Krishna, thank you for a wonderful class. I was driving through West Virginia this weekend and was tired and was chanting and singing kirtan, and I didn't pay too much attention to my surroundings other than driving. But one of the only things that I noticed was the smallest of signs that said, "Fear God." Wow. And I looked at this sign and it really struck me. I've seen signs like that my whole life, and I've never really had the impact that it had on me the other day, where I felt so sorry and just my heart filled with just sadness for people that take this message. And this is the direction that they go with their spirituality. And I'm thinking, to your point, that Krishna has given us this amazing opportunity process to chant japa. And if we use that 2 hours a day to fully engage in his service and cultivate that friendship, that relationship that you were speaking with, just how blessed we are to have a God that is accessible, that is not fearsome to us as his disciples. So just a quick reflection. I know there are others who would like to speak. I just wanted to share. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, sometimes different aspects of the Lord's divinity can be focused on and sometimes misrepresented in how we let that resonate in our heart. It's said that respect is at the base of all relationships. And so this fear of God can be paralleled with a respect, a reverence. You know, even when Arjuna saw the universal form of the Lord, he in great fear and reverence bowed to the Lord and said, "You are the supreme being, you know, like, please be done with this terrible form." But that's the base platform of respecting that you are God, I am your servant. From that platform of respect, and we can see this even with our relationships with each other, if there's not respect in the relationship, then there's not much of a relationship. But if there's a foundation of respect, then we can build on that into servitorship, friendship, rental, and so on and so forth. Thank you for your comment. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Bhima,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bhima Prabhu, you had your hand raised.
Haribol Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
It's like you have your PhD in the correct answers. The idea of fear of God, it is said that fear of God is the first knowledge. And that fear of God is an understanding that there are laws to the universe and that these laws, in fact, myself personally, I have learned more about Krishna by how much I've been slapped down, how immediate as John Lennon said, instant karma. He had a song called Instant Karma. So we come to understand that Krishna is reciprocating it with us. When we become aware of God, when we become aware of Krishna, Krishna is reciprocating with us. Radhanath Maharaj once said that if we don't see Krishna in everything, then we don't see Krishna in anything. Meaning that we have to understand that everything, Prabhu, could you quote the one who sees me everywhere and everything in me? Could you quote that? What's the correct quotation on that in the Gita? He's very deep.
He's never lost to me.
Adipurush is saying he is never lost to me.
Right. So not only in the good things in life, I'm in the country, I'm in nature, there's a lot of beauty. There's also a lot of brutality in nature. The horses that I love one day and see that are so full of life the next day, sometimes we've had great tragedies. And, we come to see, especially with a lot of animals on the farm here and around us, surrounding us and on other farms, we see life and death every day. And we're reminded of the fear of God, of the fear of this world, of the fear of this material nature. And not so much fear, but an understanding. And that is that first understanding is fear, to always see Krishna in everything. And that's Akrura's footsteps. He's not seeing Krishna, but he sees the footsteps. He sees the clue, the small indentation in the dust of Vrajadam. And we have these footsteps as well, all around us in nature, in our dealing with the devotees, for my own case, in my own corrections that I see happening when I know for a fact that if I do this particular action or I behave in this way, there will be recompense. There will be some kind of feedback. And then what is delightful and ecstatic in that real quiet way is that despite the fact of us being corrected by Krishna, we at least know it's his hand that is correcting us, that perhaps it isn't a gentle hand on our cheek. Maybe it's the backhand across our temple, for some of us who do not learn by hearing, but need to learn by experience. So we begin to see Krishna everywhere and in everything, and in everything that that we deal with. So fear of God is a necessary thing. It's a necessary first step. It's why do we follow the 4 regulative principles? It's because if you don't, you better start fearing. So I just wanted to tie all those things together, including Akrura's clues that he was giving of Krishna's presence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for these points. Yeah, there's it said I was hearing recently that like if there's police enforcement, a thief will be very much afraid of police enforcement because they see that as their own punishment. But someone who's a law-abiding citizen, they don't have that same, they have a respect of the position, but they can actually be jovial. They'd be happy to see them because they say, this is someone who's protecting me. Someone who's, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I could develop a nice friendship with this person.
So, it was a family emergency, so we're gonna do Guru Puja first,
Okay,
and then we're gonna have first.
okay,
So it's time.
okay.
He's not-
Hare Krishna. Jai. Okay, Congratulations, Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai. So to reiterate what Champakalata Prabhu said, we'll do Guru Puja first and then Darshan will come after. Hare Krishna.
Lotus feet of our
Jai Shri Prabhupada. Jai Manohara Prabhu. Okay, dear devotees, this was the class. It's Tuesday. You are now dismissed. Or if you'd like, you can stick around for Guru Puja. Thank you, Jeffrey Prabhu. Very intelligent question. Bhima Prabhu, Bruce Prabhu. How was your parikram, Bruce? Did you pray for us? Bruce Almighty, I should say. Should address him properly.
I absolutely did. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everyone. Okay, have a wonderful day. I have to keep working for Krishna. I'm not working for a boss. I'm working for Krishna. My boss is a mere instrument of Krishna's mercy. Chimunajaya, who's your boss? Who's your boss, Chimunajaya? Chimunajaya, who is your boss? Who are you working for? Chimunajaya, she's probably...
Ananda Bihari, your boss is a chef.
Who's my boss?
Your boss is a chef.
Is a chef. Yeah, I'm working for my wife. Yeah, she's the boss. That's true. That's true. Yeah, Bhima Prabhu is very envious of my boss.
I'm envious of the scones.
You don't have enough pious credits for that. I'm sorry.
Oh, good one. Good one.
You have to take birth again. Right, Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishaya Gopale Vimte Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Vishnu Padaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshkatari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
All right. Sundaranandaji, nice seeing you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody. We love you. We need you. Come back tomorrow.